Call this meeting to order at 6:09 PM. Madam Clerk, can we do roll call, please?
Director Burnworth,
Here.
Director Goodell,
Here.
Director Medard, Director Proctor,
Here.
Director Berker,
Here.
Director Valdez,
Yeah.
Director Garcia.
Would everybody please stand for the pledge of allegiance? Ready? Begin.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we'll do with our legal counsel approval for a request for remote appearance by board members.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of our board directors has submitted a request for remote appearance under the just cause provision of AB 2449. Director James Garcia is online. His video is on. His audio is on. We confirmed that he was able to hear us. Director Garcia, I just have to ask you two questions pursuant to AB 2449 before we can move forward with action on the agenda, which is there any adult age 18 or older in the room with you?
Nope, I'm by myself in my room here. Yeah.
Okay, that's all we needed to know, so we can move forward. Because there's no vote needed when it's a just cause appearance. A vote's only needed if it's an emergency circumstance provision. So we'll just include in the minutes Director Garcia's request for a remote appearance form. For the board's information, if you haven't had a chance to review it, Director Garcia is sick, and out of an abundance of caution for his fellow board members, he's appearing remotely. We can move on to item 5.
Perfect. Now we'll move on to item 5, consider approval of the agenda. In the case of an emergency, items may be added to the agenda by a majority vote of the board of directors. An emergency is defined as a work stoppage, a crippling disaster, or other activity that severely imperils public health, safety, or both. Items on the agenda may be taken out of sequential order as their priorities determined by the board of directors. The board may take action on any item appearing on the agenda. Do I have a consideration to approve the agenda?
I so move.
I'm second.
I have a motion by Goodell, second by Proctor. Madam Clerk, can we do roll call vote, please?
Director Burnworth,
Yes.
Director Goodell,
Yes.
Director Medard,
Yes.
Director Proctor,
Yes.
Director Berker,
Yes.
Director Valdez,
Yes.
Director Garcia.
Yes.
Now we'll move on to public comments. At this time, the board will hear comments on any agenda item. If any person wishes to be heard, they shall stand, address the president, identify themselves, and state the subject for comment. Time limit for each speaker is 3 minutes individually per item to address the board. Individuals who wish to speak on multiple items will be allowed 4 minutes in total. A total of 15 minutes shall be allocated for each item for all members of the public. The board may find it necessary to limit the total time allowable for all public comments on items not appearing on the agenda at any one meeting to 1 hour. Do we have anybody here for public comments? If you could step up to the podium, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Board of Directors. When I first looked at your agenda for today, I saw the consent agenda included approval of financial report. Well, Mr. Proctor asked some specific questions that Ms. Loper was supposed to answer today. And so how can you approve, what she has, has to say or not to say in a consent agenda? In my opinion, that motion needs to be made in the completion of her report, whether you accept it or reject it or have other changes you want to make. And when you're looking at policies, if you look at the top page or the front page, you'll see when the original policy was made, when it's reviewed, how many committees it's been reviewed by. And so you probably have or will have members of your board on that committee so that they can bring questions back before the policy is considered. And I mean, I think the consent agenda is just fine for your own payments and things like that that go to you. But when it comes to the finance, that's the most important report that you're looking at with the success of the hospital. These policies have been in operation for many years, if you look, and they just are revised and the attorney reviews them. We're supposed to review them before they come to you so that there's no problems. But anyway, and then, you know, I look at the agenda and the last thing you have on the agenda is the most important part of this whole reorganization of the hospital. And I feel offended that what were given to review came out today, or that's the first time I had access to it. And you could have done that report 3 months ago. It doesn't say anything specific. There's nothing specific about it until you get to the bottom line, which I think is one of the most important parts, of course. And that's where you explain to us your relationship to CSD. And so being transparent is not part of your mentality. I don't think. That's all I got to say. And thank you again. I'm not angry. I'm a little nervous. I spent the day in the hospital. So, but anyway, that's a long story. I don't have enough minutes.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Rubin. Do we have any other public comments?
Good evening, Kevin Smith, lifelong Imperial Valley resident, and to the board. We continue to be the financial situation. I was looking at the financial reports and it's showed that El Centro Regional had a $16 million loss. And so you add that to Pioneers Hospital's $4 million gain during that same 1 year period. The numbers don't add up, and they're not going to add up unless you guys do something drastic. And I think that you have to hit the pause button on your deal with El Centro Regional until they straighten out their side of the ledger. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other public comments? And we'll move on to board member comments. Reports on meetings and events attended by directors during the reports from my fellow directors. I have a report. I was able to attend the Becker's Healthcare Conference last week. Very informative. I'd say a good learning experience for myself and the staff that also attended. A lot on leadership, a lot on mergers and acquisitions and the healthcare, a lot on culture of the hospitals and financial strategies. And most definitely a lot to take away and then learn and apply. So I'm excited to see staff implement the stuff that they learned and then also from, myself to share with them. That's it. Do we have any upcoming board meetings or events to schedule? Or outreach ad hoc?
No, I'd just like to commend our PR team on sending out a nice article in Imperial Valley Press celebrating National Nurses Week, and it was well done. And I just want to say great job.
I have a quick comment on the education outreach. So and I apologize, Director Garcia, I should have talked to you about this before the meeting, but the education and outreach ad hoc committee, something the board may want to consider, was originally formed to educate the public about 8918 matters and the merger of Pioneers and IVHD. Something to consider is whether the ad hoc should be sort of graduated into a different sort of committee that might be formed by the board, or whether the education outreach ad hoc committee, when to put a end point on it and wrap it up. I don't know if that's after the ECRMC merger, if that's now, or if that's, but we do need to comply with the Brown Act to have a certain endpoint on it. That's just something I'll throw out for the board's consideration. If it's something, and I could go back with Director Berger and Director Proctor and Director Garcia to meet with them internally and talk about it, but it's just something to throw out for the board's consideration.
How much longer do you think we could go the way we are now, or it comes in this year?
I mean, I think certainly we could go up until closing of the ECRMC deal, because it was formed for the purposes of educating the public on AB 918, and that's part of the goals of AB 918. It just depends on, now that we have sort of a more robust team with respect to PR, marketing, advertising, it's just a matter of whether the ad hoc members want to step out and or stay involved. It's totally up to you. Just something
If
for
I can,
consideration.
yeah, if I can make a comment on that, I think, yeah, definitely, no matter what, I think it's important that we stay intact until the acquisition is completed. Should it be completed, the message is gonna be extremely important. And I do think that our meetings have been helpful to the PR strategy team as far as masterminding some of the messaging and the direction that the messaging goes in. And then so I think it's important that we are part of those conversations and have some input on that, and then also get the feedback from our team as well, so that we can let the public know when we're asked as board members also.
That's good.
Or by AB 918 negotiation.
We continue to have bi-weekly meetings that are super productive with the ECRMC team. We're full on into diligence. We had a meeting today with the regulatory group to talk about regulatory licenses and approvals that are necessary as we move forward with the deal. Have been having really positive conversations with UCSD. And we're excited to hear today from the CEOs about their strategic vision for the district.
Yeah. And with that, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Any member of the board may request that items for the consent calendar may be removed for discussion. Items so removed shall be acted upon separately, immediately following approval of items remaining on the consent calendar.
I would move that we pull the item B to approve the expenses and financial report. We had already previously discussed, but we would be bringing this back for discussion tonight. So otherwise, I would move to approve taking off B. We do that, or do I need to do two?
You can pull that item from consent and move to approve the balance, which is just a minute.
So I do have a question. Some of the items that are on here, we had some questions on at the last meeting.
For action or consent.
Oh,
So I have a motion to approve the consent calendar without item B. Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion by Goodsell and a second by Berger. Clerk, going to do roll call, please?
Director Burnworth,
Yes.
Director Goodsell,
Yeah.
Director Medard,
Yes.
Director Proctor,
yes.
Director Berger,
Yes.
Director Baghdad,
Yes.
Director Garcia.
Yes.
And so then we do item B. So
Now we take item B, correct?
we'll do item B when Carly with her.
There you go. Okay, so I know I did a very brief report last month, but, for the month of March, we did have a positive 463,523. There was one little different this month, for the month of March, we did start paying for the other items that Heffernan was paying. We do have those expenses on the P and L. It was about $300,000. We still need to bring over onto the balance sheet the cash from the Heffernan side of IVHD as well as the other expenses. So you'll see a change in April for the fiscal year to date, but I'll also remind you guys that month. So for March, our census did drop a little bit to 44 average daily census. Our outpatients were up a little bit in some of them. So our revenue was up on that side. Our expenses stayed consistent on a daily basis. February also obviously has less days than March, so the expenses look like they went down, but they stayed consistent. So for the fiscal year to date, which is 9 months through the year, is a $4.5 million profit. We do have a 72.4 days cash on hand. As you know, we have to keep 50 for our bond covenant. And our other bond covenant is debt service coverage ratio. We need to have 1.2, and we currently have 1.87. And the reason why the finances were pulled from the last board meeting and put into this board meeting is because I did not include the revenue departments, their net P&L. They are included in the packet now. Those are fiscal year to date March for this year, and I did include the previous year so you could see change year over year. There are some areas that we are looking at. You can tell a big decrease in revenue. Obviously, we did change last April a new EMR, so there is like revenue recognition that we need to see that is potentially going to different departments that used to go. Example, women's services. Some of those revenues could be going into the radiology or lab services that we need to see if that is why some of those revenues are decreasing on that side. So I know, Mr. Proctor, you had some questions? No.
No, I think I'm glad that you did that because it's one of the things that, departments, if each department doesn't know their overhead, right, and where they're at, like they could be thinking like, okay, I need to cut costs, but in reality, their department is actually generating a lot of revenue and carrying the other departments, and they have departments that are losing money. Well, maybe those staff members can start being creative and think about how they can be more fiscally responsible. So I think it's something that could be very productive where everybody can work as a team together to think about the finances, and I think your frontline staff and the people that are actually working on the floor could probably be the most creative when it comes to, generating revenues or decreasing revenues where they're at. So I appreciate the extra work on you.
Yeah, and then we'll be bringing these quarterly. So if I don't get it done in July, we'll definitely bring these back in August. So you'll see the whole fiscal year to date, June. And so then every quarter we'll bring in the net.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have a question about the deduction from revenue. Is that like a contra revenue? It's like the realistic number.
So that will be, so our gross number, we'll just give an example, say the charges that you're gonna see on your bill is $100. Medi-Cal is gonna pay you $90 of that. So your balance of 91 is your deductions from revenue. We're not gonna collect it. So you never wanna look at growth numbers.
Yeah, that's why I want to make sure.
Yeah.
What that was.
Yes.
Okay, so it's realistic. Because there is some big numbers for us, for some of them.
Yes.
No, I think it's good. That way, everybody, like, it's nice to see every department's net operating income, right? Because there's some that are split across departments. So when you think about it, sometimes you can cut a department, right? But then it increases in other departments, net operating costs, which shift them from one to the next. And so I think it's good to see that picture when you go through. I mean, I'm always shocked about how much positive revenue that the skilled nursing facility brings in, and then like how much other departments, significantly lose. And I think it shows a lot of transparency about, when we combine services with ECRC or, services that got cut from other places, it shows the full transparent picture. So I really appreciate the extra work that you and your team did. Thank you.
And I appreciate getting it ahead of time too, so thank you very much.
I have a motion to approve the expenses and financial report?
So moved.
I have a motion by Berger and a second by Goodsell. Madam Clerk, can you do roll call, please?
Director Burnworth,
Yes.
Director Goodsell,
Yeah.
Director Medard,
Yes.
Director Proctor.
Yes.
Director Burger,
Yes.
Director Valdez,
Yes.
Director Garcia.
Yes.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to item 9, which is the action items. And I think, Mr. Proctor, you had usually lump all the policies and procedures together, but I think you had some to
Yeah.
add questions.
So at our last meeting, we had some items that dealt with emergency services, emergency planning, and things of the like. And some of us had a few questions, and so we sent them back so we could revisit the policies. But after getting copies of them, I still have some questions, so I'm wondering whether Mr. George Mendoza is here to answer some of those questions.
It's not.
He is not, okay. The concerns that I have is that some of these policies, there's certainly certain revisions that have to do with emergency management and planning. And so I would really love for him to be here, and I'd like to move some of these to another date. And for that, he's the author on action item A, B, C, D, E, and J. And I think if we give him about a month, and I'll probably call and have a conversation with you, Chris, about my concerns, and so maybe you can address them by then. If we can move it till maybe the meeting on the 12th of June, would that be, or when they're ready? Okay,
Yes, good follow.
I'll give you a call.
Is there a time? Do they have to be in place for a certain time?
Yeah, that's.
Is there any?
Yeah,
Some of them appear to be like yearly revisions. However, for example, on some of the items, it still has pioneers from Rural Healthcare District. That's the little stuff that, typo stuff that can be fixed.
Those have been fixed.
Have they?
Yeah.
You have a
Okay.
separate packet.
Okay. And then on another one, there are some forms like from Cal OSHA that haven't been revised, or they're still using the old forms. And then as far as like the protocols that are being used, so we'll talk about this.
Yeah.
That was something that. Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Proctor, can you? It
Yeah,
would be
okay.
A, B, C, D, E, and J.
Yes, I make a motion, to table action items A, B, C, D, E, and J. For later.
Second.
Okay, so. Yeah, okay, so I have a motion by Director Proctor and second by Menard Junior. Can we do a roll call vote, please?
Director Burnworth,
Yes.
Director Goodsell,
Yes.
Director Medard,
Yes.
Director Burger,
Yes.
Director Proctor,
Yes.
Director Valdez.
Yes.
and Director Garcia.
Yes.
That puts us on to policy.
So now we're on policy, F, and if the board wants to consider, a motion to consolidate and approve F, G, H, I, and L, K and L. Those are the outstanding policies that need action.
I will move to approve the remaining of the policies. That would be F, H, I, correct?
F, G, H, I, K, and L.
Yes. Oh, we just one question now. Because, the hospital evacuation plan, so like, you're okay with that one? That's also when the, Mr. Mendoza.
Yeah.
Oh,
was like,
Oh,
was
it
in
was.
front of us, so it was another emergency.
okay, I got another one. Okay, yeah, include that. So it would be,
Yeah, you can, you can just make a motion to, the standalone motion to table, item 9F, and we'll just vote on it.
and H.
F and H.
So I'll make a motion to table item F and H as well, for a later time, the table for a later time.
Second,
Second.
a motion by Proctor and a second by Leonard Junior. Can we do a roll call? Please?
Director Burnworth,
Yes.
Director Goodell,
Yeah.
Director Bedard,
Yes.
Director Proctor,
Yes.
Director Burker, Director Hernandez,
Yes.
and Director Garcia.
Yes.
Thank you.
So now the remaining policies are G, I, K, and L.
I still moving to approve G, I, K, and L.
I second.
And a motion by Berger and a second by Proctor. Can we do a roll call, please?
Director Burnworth,
Yes.
Director Goodell,
Yes.
Director Bedard,
Yes.
Director Proctor,
Yes.
Director Burker,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
and Director Garcia.
Yes.
Yeah. Now we can move on to item N, or M. Authorize renew contract with Canon Medical Service System Agreement presented by Carly Zamora.
Sure. Item M is for a renew contract with the Canada Medical System. It's a service agreement. It's a 4-year agreement for our CT scanner. This agreement has been in place, for the last 8 years. The CT scanner was purchased in 2017. So this is the third, renewal. In the last 2 years, we have had them come out and service it about 15 times. So it does, it's necessary. And there is a 10,991 increase. Lots.
Do you have any questions for the board?
The increase is just based off of the change in service or
The time.
It's the time less.
it's comparable to the previous?
Yes.
Any questions or motion?
To approve the contract renewal for the medical system service agreement for the county.
Second.
I have a motion by Bitzel and a second by Medard. Can we do a roll call vote?
Director Burnworth,
Yes.
Director Goodell,
Yeah.
Director Bedard,
Yes.
Director Proctor,
Yes.
Director Burker,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
and Director Garcia.
Yes.
A quick question on that. What is the lifespan of that machine?
I don't have that answer. Okay.
We're actually working on installing them.
That's the-
Oh, yeah.
It's just-
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you treat them right, you get it right. 10 to 15.
10 to 15.
Director Goodell, can you make sure your mic is on?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to item N. Authorize renew contract with Canon MRI 3T non-service agreement with Carly Zamora.
This contract is very similar. It's a renewal for the MRI. The MRI is 6 years old. We purchased it in 2019. This is the first renewal that has come up in the last 2 years. We've had them come out 13 times. And the last time was actually in April when we had them come out. This one, with inflation increase of 13,806 and 20 cents from the previous, renewal.
Is this also a new equipment or?
No, it's a service agreement. It's existing.
Any questions, comments, or motion?
I still move that we approve in the renewal contract for the county MRI.
Second.
I have a motion by Berger and a second by Medard. Roll call vote, please.
Director Burnworth,
Yes.
Director Goodell,
Yeah.
Director Bedard,
Yes.
Director Proctor,
Yes.
Director Burker,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
and Director Garcia.
Yes.
Move on to item O, authorize Oracle Cerner changes related to IVHD with Chris Warnberg.
Yeah, so this is part of the changeover that we have to do with relation to IVHD taking over Pioneers. So this changes name, MPI numbers, TIN numbers, and everything else within the system of Cerner. And does a complete changeover. So they're anticipating that this is going to, once we have thumbs up on this, that we'll have a about 10-week turnaround time is what they're anticipating. And that will be before we can really start sending bills out under IVHD and also receiving monies as IVHD through that process. So it is unfortunate. I'm gonna tell you, you know, when we got this information, I was not happy about the $113,000 because I don't think it's that difficult for them to change, you know, names and numbers and stuff like that within the system. But you know, I don't work at Oracle, so apparently it does. We are in conversations with them though to try and lower this amount. So if it, you know, it won't go higher than this, but we are trying to get it.
Has there been any conversation with Cerner yet, on what it's going to take to get Cerner to talk to Cerner when the acquisition takes place?
Yeah, we've had conversations with them on that one. I would expect a much higher number when all that plays out. And that process will take 1 to 2 years at least, most likely to actually happen. It's pretty extensive as far as what they say anyways, that'll have to happen with merging ECRMC and IVHD. So it's we're on our platforms are similar as far as we're on Community Works, but their setup is obviously different than our setup because every setup is unique for the hospital. And how we set up things and how we did set up things is different than how they have set up things. And then there's also the domain issue, because they're not currently residing on the same domain. And so that apparently makes it a little bit more difficult as well. So that one is going to be a bigger lift for sure, but it is something we really want to do.
Will this process that we're going to undertake here, streamline the process on the other side, for that Cerner merger?
Kind of. What it's going to do is going to fix what we need to do now for IVHD. We're in this limbo area right now where we have a different TIN, we have different MPI numbers. Here shortly we'll have a different license. And so in order for all of that to flow through, we have to have them change it in their system because that's how bills go out and that's also how payments get as far as being received in clearinghouse. And so that is like this part of it we have to do just to get us. We'll have to do something very similar with the CRMC. And then once those two things are done for both of us, it'll be the big build as far as how they're going to bring them together and make them one. And so that all of the, you know, if you go to see a doctor at the clinic here and then end up in the ER at ECRMC and then come over here for surgery or whatever that case might be, like you share the same medical record number. Currently, you'd have two separate medical records number, and we'd have to pull the data as opposed to it just already being there. So that's what we're trying to do with the full group coming together. And according to so far all the calls that we've had with them, like I said, they're not really sure what to do with it, and with what we want to do. Because they've never done anything like that before. But I would expect that we would see something very similar to this, another 113, give or take, $1,000 when we do the same thing with ECRMC and change it over.
I just got, sorry, I'm sorry. So I also have another question, the builder and me. So most of these things have effective dates. So you're gonna get a new license, a new tax ID, but you still have your old one running. So you're going to be running these programs side by side, right? So you can build this service there,
Yeah, that's,
an effective date there, by the effective date.
that's the plan. Like right now, that's.
Just want to make sure they know that.
Oh, yes, they do.
Okay.
And they understand that like when we have that cutoff, like that changes everything at
Right.
that point. So when we know when that is, they'll let us know. And then as soon as that happens, we change everything on our end. And there'll be a cutover time for a new kind of go live for the new system.
And I think also too, it would be by the effective date of which contract is approved at what time as well, because it will not all be the same.
Right. And the issue that we'll have with this one, and it'll be the same thing that ECRMC will experience as well, is even though that is the cutoff, we still send
Yeah.
bills out under the old one that we're gonna be waiting for it to come in under the new one and making sure that they, right, and then we don't end up having it try to come in.
We have
And there-
someplace supposed.
Right. So that's part of that process is being able to kind of keep that back door open.
So is that included in
Yes.
this 113?
Yes. The one thing that's not included in there that they talked about, that's a big piece of that is our patient portal and some of the changes there. But there is a new patient portal piece that we're looking at anyways, that's much more user friendly for, patients and so forth. And so when we would do that change over to that new patient portal, that's when that would happen.
Okay.
And that would be something that we're looking at as far as capital budget for next year.
As long as they allow you to run both programs. at the same time.
Oh, yeah, that was, we had those questions and concerns when we were talking to them about that, because we're like, how is that gonna happen? Like, you're gonna cut it off. But we're still waiting for money to come in, because we sent it out under the old TIN, under the old MPIs, under the old
Right.
license, and how's it gonna come back to us then? Because it's gonna hit a wall.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Just want to make sure.
Chris, what is our commitment end with CERN at PMH?
9 or 8 years and 10 months.
And ECRMC, if you know?
They have a 7-year contract on theirs, so theirs is a little bit shorter than that, so they've got 6.5 years left.
So we've got plenty of time. I know I brought this up numerous times about I really like when there's competition, so we can get the best for the community. So maybe at some point, we'll start planning about looking at other programs like Epic, since I think Yuma uses Epic, right? Or that system, is it called Epic?
Yeah,
Yeah, Epic.
yeah,
And then UCSD uses Epic. Right, I mean, it's only gonna make sense, I think, if we start looking at something like that.
yeah, the way that they're set up is they're Epic and Cerner are 1 and 2. And if you go globally, Cerner's 1. You go nationally here in the States, Cerner or Epic's 1. So it's they go back and forth. But I can tell you that to your point though, when Oracle purchased them, there's a lot of issues that they experience from a growing pain standpoint. In particular with their implementations and how their implementation teams they consulted with people, so they weren't true Oracle employees. They were consultants that they brought in because they kind of bit off more than they could chew with the number of people that were going to switch over. And so the customer service at that point was awful. Even our implementation could have gone so much better. Pablo would say the same thing for their group, and it really had to do with the fact that they just weren't set up to be able to do that. And so in that instance, because of how that played out, I do know that they've lost some people as a result of that, because they were just not prepared to be able to bring all that on.
And I'm thinking about it more like from a global aspect, that most of the places where we have to fly people out to are already on Epic, so for me, it'd be.
Well, right now, everything happens through a health exchange.
Okay.
And so that was the whole idea of bringing on these electronic medical records, is so that you could literally go from one place to the other. And so we put all our data on the exchange. And so if somebody goes to, whether it's Epic or Meditech or Athena, was another one of the smaller ones, they can actually go into that health exchange and pull the data out of the health exchange that they need to be able to take care of somebody in the ER or whatever. They don't have to be on the same platform to do that. The health exchange is created to make that possible.
But what about some of like the local providers? Do they have access to server?
They have access to the same health exchange where they can pull the same data. So if like right now, if a patient is seen in the hospital here, they could pull that data from the health exchange on that patient, to see what, if there was medication or anything else like that. And most of like the doctor's offices and stuff like that, they don't run like an Epic, they run different standalones for for a clinic, because you wouldn't, I mean, it's pretty expensive if you're gonna try to do Epic in a clinic. So, but the health exchanges are what you need to be a part of to be able to go and grab the data out of it.
These are the kinds of things that I would really love to get the opinion of like the chief medical officer. But I haven't seen him in what, 2 months or something.
Yeah, he's out on military right now. And so that's why he hasn't been here the last two.
It's been more than 2. It's been more than 2 months.
Well, that's why he hasn't been here for the last two. This is why.
Once.
Right. So, and that's a conversation that we're having.
I just want to say I've never heard anything good, anybody say anything good about Cerner, ever. And so like I have a hard time believing when they say, we've never done this. I'm like, hospitals do M&As all the time. Like this is not
That's like,
anything that we made.
this one is different. And honestly, I believe because of how it is different, it should be actually much easier. Because of the fact that usually what happens is, most of the time you have a company that goes in and they'll acquire somebody and then they just take them over and then it's like kind of a fresh build on that. We're actually asking them to take their build and our build and merge them together so that it's one single instance. That's the part that's different. It's not just like acquiring them and they're on, Meditech and we're saying, hey, you got to be on Cerner now. They have all the same setup, as far as the backbones go, for Cerner as we do. The difference is trying to make them speak the same language, for certain things in the medical records associated with that. So that's the part that's different. It's not, we're asking them to merge it into one record instead of them just acquiring that and saying, hey, guess what? You're on Epic now. Hey, guess what? You're on Cerner now. Guess what? You're on Meditech now. And then they have their own. We're saying, no, you've got to be part of ours and under our. So that's what we wanted, I guess.
And before we implemented the CMR here, was there any any departments still on like paper records?
Yeah.
Really? Do we still have anybody on paper records now?
Everybody is paying for backup, but that was part of doing that. So when we had multiple systems, I don't know what it was like at ECRMC, but we had like multiple different pieces. So one group would be on one medical record, one group would be on another medical record. And so we had multiple different pieces that weren't necessarily speaking to each other. And going with one is that was part of the reason it was supposed to make it so that seamlessly across the entire organization, the medical record would flow, as it wasn't happening before.
Seems like there's enough unique identifiers within a patient's health record where they would just be able to pull it.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's very simple, and I think it should be like a pretty, like, realistically, we'll already have this all done as far as IVHD is concerned. When we talked to them and had the conversation, I asked them and I said, realistically, you should be able to take their location setups that they have over there that are not ours, right? And be able to insert it into ours and be able to do it that way. And it was the kind of like I don't know if we can do that. I don't know that we can't do that. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out with them. I think it should be much simpler than that because it's data, extracting data, and it's all about a build that they do, and they do it by essentially the different modules for the different departments. And they have to take those and plug them in when they do a build anyways. I don't know why they can't pull all the data that already exists in there on how they've set it up at ECRMC in their ER, for example, and then plug it into ours and have it exist. But it seemed to be a foreign concept.
Unfortunately, we're just kind of stuck because they have us with Cerner, so we can't say, oh, just scrap it all. And they've nickel and dimed us, since we installed it, so, it's been pretty bad.
It's making them,
Yeah.
their part,
Right.
which that was one of my questions. I don't know, Central's at 7 years, or whatever you said, it's whatever month. Is there an outlaw, and I don't wanna cause anyone in the industry to have a heart attack, because I know how it goes to change your management system, it is like probably the closest thing to put you in your grave as anything you could do. But would we have the ability to cancel and maybe say that Epic or something would be more in keeping with what we, I think, we're obviously the
Yeah. We asked that question. One of the things that they said is that you would have to pay for the contract to get out of it. And then you would, when we looked at Epic, we would have to pay to get onto the Epic software. So that was going to be prohibitive in terms of expense. So we decided to just go along with what was already approved and signed and delivered by.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain provisions, like, it would take a lot. It would take a lot for us to be able to say that they breached the contract and so we won out of it. Like, it would be a lot, kind of a losing uphill battle on that one, for sure. So and I get what you're saying too, but, to Pablo's point as well, like, Epic is expensive. Like, it's not cheap. We're on a platform with Cerner that's their community works platform, which is their cheaper platform. So we're not even on enterprise edition of Cerner, which would be more expensive as well. This one is literally set up for organizations our size, and that's why it is cheaper. Epic doesn't have anything like that. You can kind of do like the offshoot.
that we're going to be a much larger combined entity than what either one is alone, if that would be cause enough to take a look at something different, but I'm getting the response that no, so I'm just gonna file that one away. And then nobody has any other questions, I would make a motion that we authorize the.
I actually have a really quick one, and please excuse my ignorance, but is there anything within the contract that would stipulate that we start over on our time frame by entering into a new agreement as a new customer, if you will, and with that, is there any change to, I don't know billing, but is there any change to the pricing in the amounts that we can charge under this because we're entering technically into a new contract?
The only thing that would change is what we would end up paying out and potentially the term, right? We might be able to get something where we're saying, okay, we want to be under one agreement now. PCRMC's is 2.5 years shorter than ours. They might say, okay, well, it's 1.5 years shorter now. And allow it to come together, and then maybe there could be potentially some sort of savings that would be possible through that. I really doubt that they would do it from that standpoint. The push that they've kind of given us at this point is that they would say, well, you guys just need to move to Enterprise Edition. You need to move to the bigger one, which then is also more money. And it would also mean a completely new build. And they would charge us for that as well. And so it would just be more expensive all the way around. I think that the consensus that we have at this point is that this is what we've got. This is what we're going to stay with. And then we've got about, 6-7 years to figure out what we want to do differently in that time frame. And then who knows, maybe things work out the way that they can or work out in our favor. And it's like, okay, we want to stay with what we've got, because Oracle has only been in this game with Cerner for a very short time frame, and Oracle's very progressive as far as and there was a reason why they wanted to jump into this sphere. And we're seeing some of it now as far as some of the things that technology-wise that they're able to bring in. And so that, 6 years from now, we might look at that and be like, yeah, we're not leaving. Or maybe we say, yeah, work with them to get on the enterprise edition because our size would warrant that at that point.
And as it relates to this specific agreement, in transitioning our TIN and all of the information over to IVHD, is there any ramifications on the billing portion of it, as far as the pricing?
Not on the pricing, but what it does do is they'll.
By pricing, I mean the billable, amounts.
No, that's based off of what we put in for our charge master is the billable, what we bill. And then what we actually receive is based off of the contracts that we have with each of the districts.
Changing.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to what she was talking about on those other pieces, on the ones by department. So that top amount is what we charge. That one right underneath there is the one that says, if you don't get it, you don't get that amount. And so what's left is what we actually got out of it. So that won't change. But there will most likely be a time frame when this transition does happen where we'll be in a limbo state where we're not going to be getting any money in, even though we're sending our bills out. And that's the whole reason on this, how we're trying to set this up so that we can limit that as much as possible because they'll all kind of end up sitting somewhere until they can clear it through. And there's going to be, one that's going to be tied to our old MPI license, and then another one's going to be tied to the new MPI and the new license and the new TIN, and making sure that as we build that out, we can minimize that amount as much as possible because that's basically not getting any money in.
And that's where the additional 20 days of cash on hand comes into play, right?
Absolutely, that's where it will.
I think one is about 29.
And motion by Director Goodson, you have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Goodson, a second by Matter. Do a roll call vote, please.
Director Bernworth,
Yes.
Director Goodfellow,
Yeah.
Director Madar,
Yes.
Director Proctor,
Yes.
Director Burger,
Yes.
Director Valdez.
Yes.
Director Garcia.
Yes.
And also, just so you guys are aware, as you see on here, it does say Pioneers Memorial Healthcare District all over it. And part of that, it has to be that way because that is how the agreement is until they make the changeover, and then it would be transitioned to IVHD from there. So you guys.
Move on to item B, authorized firewall upgrades by President Luker.
We have 2 firewalls that are end of life and we need them not to be or we're not secure. It's a 3-year agreement.
Since our motion.
Was there any competitive bidding on this?
I don't know that there was.
Yeah, it's TDW and that's with
Yeah.
our, we
Yeah.
go through our GPO.
You know, the last time they did a threat analysis on hospital, just to look for any loopholes? Like cybersecurity threat analysis.
I'm not sure. There are constantly ones that we do, like, some of you had the opportunity to be part of a phishing expedition that we did as far as the emails, and that's part of that process. We're constantly looking for those things. But as far as like the full on where they do that report out, yeah, I don't know if it happened in my brief absence or not, but it hasn't happened to my knowledge in the time frame that I've been here. And usually that is something we do annually.
But you should get reports on the background.
That's what I.
Yeah.
Uh,
And we do
But
have
if they're
that.
normal, you won't see anything.
I did have a conversation with, your IT person,
Gary, Walter,
Walter. And, I was talking to him about these kinds of issues, it was about a month ago, and he did say they do constant penetration testing on their own.
Yeah.
Threats and stuff like that. I was pretty confident about it.
and we usually do contracting with groups like that to be able to one, warn us, but then part of that is they're supposed to be looking at all that stuff too and sending that out. And then we get the report out, like how many people clicked on that email, how many people clicked on the link in the email, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I wonder, because I've been parts or I've been a part of some investigations that kind of go a bit deeper into that. And they'll come and plug into data ports and see what they can access from there, and do things of that sort. And I think that that would increase the IVHD's leverage to deal with other companies. If you have that level of security, you can give that assurance.
Yep. I'll double check on when we had the last full one. Let you guys know.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions or motion?
So move to approve the firewall upgrades as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion by Menard and a second by Berger. Can we do a roll call vote, please?
Director Brenworth,
Yes.
Director Goodsell,
Yes.
Director Menard,
Yes.
Director Proctor,
Yes.
Director Burger,
Yes.
Director Valdez,
Yes.
and Director Garcia.
Yes.
Moving on to item Q, authorize the approval of engagement letter and professional services agreement between Moss Adams LLP and PMHD for financial audit services for fiscal year ending June 20th, 2025 with Partner Broker.
And apologies, that should be Mouse Adams with IVHD. So this is for our auditors for this current fiscal year. They come out and do a preliminary in June, which they would like to come do a little bit of an entrance presentation with you guys. I know they want to do it earlier, but just didn't pan out. I know your next board meeting, you guys are really busy. And then they come out for a full audit, about 3 weeks in August, and they should report in October for you guys. There is a little bit higher of a charge this year because IVHD is new and they have to do a lot more disclosures than they normally have to. So there's an extra $25,000 added for that instance.
I have a couple of questions. On the face page, it talks about the review by legal. Is that because we have to think about this contract and then once we merge with El Central Regional, how's that gonna work?
Just all of our board items say reviewed by legal, so we send anything that has an agreement over to legal for them to review just in case. So that's why we did send it, we just didn't have it.
Yeah, and we, Carly sent the contract over to us and I did look at it and it's generally fine. I would just ask Moss Adams to change the jurisdiction provision from Washington to California, but even if they say no, which hopefully they don't, it's a very low risk, contract. And Moss Adams, like a large, very well-established software firm, so I feel comfortable with it.
Any other questions? For motion?
So move to approve the engagement letter with the consideration being given that it'll be sent over by legal to make corrections if possible. Seconded.
A motion by Menard, second by Proctor. Can we do a roll call vote, please?
Director Brenworth,
Yes.
Director Goodsell,
Yes.
Director Menard,
Yes.
Director Proctor,
Yes.
Director Burger,
Yes.
Director Valdez,
Yes.
and Director Garcia.
Yes.
Our discussion and possible action to approve one engagement agreement for special counsel services with Procopio, Corey, Hargreaves, and Savage LLP for bond and financing matters in a waiver letter with U.S. Bank Trust Company National Association.
I'll take this one. So your board may recall back in early March, you approved a special tax council agreement with Squire Patton Boggs and a waiver letter. That scope of work was to render a no adverse federal tax opinion for the Pioneers $15 million bond issuance from 2017. And basically it's a tax opinion that would establish that the changeover from Pioneers to IVHD doesn't have an adverse federal tax effect on the bonds for the benefit of the bond trustee. Squire did all the work, gave us a draft of the no adverse effect opinion, and literally on the eve of, and we sent the draft over to US Bank, the trustee, to make sure before they sign it that it's not missing something that they would otherwise want. And then got a call from Squire letting us know about 2 Fridays ago that they were no longer able to represent IVHD. Sounds like they have a conflict. They represented US Bank. I don't know how they ran a conflict check. I don't know how this happened, but it was super disappointing. I mean, there's no financial impact because they didn't send us a bill, and even if they did, we wouldn't pay it. But it wasted 2 months of time, which sucks. And there's no other, way to say it, and there's no way we could have anticipated it. So we immediately solicited special tax counsel solicitations from other firms. I reached out to one of my old partners at Procopio because I knew they wouldn't have a conflict, since we didn't have a conflict when I was at Procopio. And the other upside, and so they gave us the engagement agreement, which is included in the board packet, and the waiver, which is also included in the board packet. Most large firms will have done work with banks, so they will all look for a waiver with respect to the bank. The difference was Squire actually represented the trustee on the bond issuance back in 2017. Procopio did not. So the motion or the proposed action for the board is to approve the engagement agreement with Procopio for special tax counsel for financing matters, and the waiver that's also in the agenda packet with respect to US Bank Trust Company. The only upside here, other than, I'd say the only upside here is the hourly rate is lower, because Squire's hourly rate was $1,030 and $975 for the two folks working on it. And the hourly rate for Procopio is $870, what it's worth. But that's why this item is on the agenda. Happy to answer any questions.
Do we anticipate that it'll be streamlined because most of the work has been done?
Yes. So I've talked to Chip Edie, who's the attorney who would be working on it at Procopio about it, and we would basically just send them the Squire opinion. Of course, because they're attorneys and they have to do their own diligence, they would just have to make sure that they agree with the no adverse, opinion, but I don't anticipate it would cost. So the Squire estimate for the no adverse tax opinion was not to exceed 15,000. I expect Procopio's will come in at significantly less than that because it's already basically written, but we can't expect them to just put a signature on someone else's work. So they're, they have to do their own work. And there's no cap on it just because for efficiencies, if we need special tax counsel for the ECRMC deal, we just use the same folks.
Any questions for a motion?
This was no retainer, right?
Correct. There's no retainer's waived.
No motion?
So move to approve as presented for the tax purposes for Procopio.
And don't forget the waiver.
Oh, and the waiver.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a motion by Medar and second by Berger. Can we do roll call vote?
Director Burnworth,
Yes.
Director Goodsell,
Yeah.
Director Bedard,
Yes.
Director Proctor,
Yes.
Director Burker,
Yeah.
Director Valdez,
Yes.
Director Garcia.
Yes.
Now we'll move on to item S, the joint CEO presentation regarding ECRMC acquisition and strategic planning. Since we've already been here for an hour, I was gonna ask if we want to take a 5-minute break. You guys are up.
Want to take a break or?
I was just asking.
So, I don't know if the audience could see the presentation.
They have the, things in the packet. They had, yeah, they had.
Can we turn that? So can we turn it?
Read it.
They have it, we should keep
I
it.
definitely don't know which one.
I don't know if it's sharing.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, you can. You can only turn it a little bit and then we all can move the projector.
Swimming, boy.
Is that better?
Can we project it on?
I need to move it back a little bit then with the rest of the board.
Oh, yeah, Mark.
Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Pablo Velez. I'm the CEO at ECRMC. And over the last couple of weeks, we have been having different meetings with our leadership team from ECRMC and EMH and started looking at gathering. We were tasked to putting together a strategic plan. And we have had several meetings. And this last week, we had one of the meetings with the team from UCSD that helped us put this together. This is not inclusive of all of the information. There is a lot of information that we still need to incorporate into this strategic plan. This is a draft. So I encourage anybody who would like to have any type of input, any questions, any suggestion to give me or give Chris or give any of the board members a call so that we could gather the stakeholders' information that you would like to see on this strategic plan. This is a very fluid strategic plan, so we want to make it a working document so that you can go back every year or sooner and see where are you in terms of implementation and things that need to be done. And then we will have to start quantifying because one of the goals of AB 918 was to merge and integrate the healthcare system down here with the ability to provide more services and new programs. So on, next slide, please. Okay, there you go. Here you can see the model of integrating. We have been meeting in terms of creating an organizational chart and have a shared governance where we have the board of directors, we have a CEO for the system, and then we have a chief operating officer, chief financial officer, chief nursing officer, chief HR officer, and a CMO. And the goal is to integrate the healthcare system with a shared governance and provide leadership, collaboration, improve coordination of care, and provide better services to the community. Next slide. When we started looking at how to structure the strategic plan, we looked at 4 big buckets, if you think about it that way, where you have clinical and operational excellence, and then we'll break those down as we go through the presentation. We want to grow some of the programs. We want to create new programs. We want to improve our operational performance that was stipulated in the AB 918. And then we're merging 2 cultures, right? We're merging PMH, ECRC, and we have to create a cultural transformation where we blend and we work together to create a better culture for the system. Next slide. Here are some of the programs or services that we should be looking at to integrate and building stronger and more efficient and sustainable healthcare for the Imperial Valley. You look at cardiology services, hospitalists, anesthesia, radiology. We talked a little bit about information technology and that is going to be a big undertaking because both organizations have multiple systems. When I came down to ECMC, we counted that we had about 120 software systems that we were paying for that were not each other. And that becomes pricey, expensive, and very redundant because people don't know what the system is supposed to do for them. So we started, have a group meeting with the IT leadership to look at what software is used here at PMH, what software we are using at ECMC, and looking at the contracts, looking at dates, looking at potentially what it would look like if we merge some of those systems together to create more efficiency, improve workflow, and potentially save some dollars. And we would like to quantify that. So we're gonna be doing the same thing with the billing and coding, the call centers, the clinics. We will be looking at supplies. We will be looking at a single license for CMS and Medi-Cal, and then different contracts with the commercial payers if we consolidate. Next slide. When you look at, these are the big rocks that need to be looked at and consolidated. You have all the liabilities insurance. We have liability insurance. PMH has liability insurance. We have a charge master. PMH has a charge master. How do we consolidate those or put those into one? Looking at medical staff services, the credentialing process, bylaws, looking again at IT, looking at pharmacy services. We have a formulary. PMH has a formulary. How do you go about bringing the groups together to look at those components and coming up with what would be the best practice for the system? Looking also at legal and regulatory, and then combining the license. Those are the big rocks that I call when you look at a strategic plan. Next slide. Here's some, during our meeting, we put kind of a high level work streams that we definitely will be assigning owners to, and then start working on actionable items so that we could move forward with the integration of the two hospitals. Next slide. We have a meeting coming up this coming Monday to continue the process that we have already started. And the team, when we got together, we were looking at what needs to happen today, what needs to happen in 3 months, what needs to happen in 6 months, and what needs to happen in 1 to 2 years. And it's going to be a lot of work, a lot of coordination, a lot of integration. And next slide. We did the same thing with, regulatory, licensing, service line, the medical staff, looking at bylaws, looking at credentialing process, looking at all those things that we need to start looking at consolidating. Next slide. We have working groups with human resources to look at different benefits, pay practice, but, and potentially looking at how do we merge and how do we create a compensation package to ensure that everybody is compensated appropriately across the enterprise. And then we looked at, we still have a lot of work to do in terms of facility upgrades. And we have a big timeframe that's coming up for KMH in terms of the seismic compliance and documents that need to be sent to HCI this coming year or before January 2026. And that is going to require some outside consultants to look at the facility, to look at where are the services that are provided here and how to build or retrofit the hospital. Next slide. And here on the next couple of slides, we get into more specific details in terms of how we gonna do some of the work that needs to be done. And I won't bore you reading all of this, but if you have any input on this, please reach out, let us know. Ideal, next slide. We did that with all the big priorities. We broke it down by growth and development, and then you can see expansion of services, creating new service line, growing the existing business that we have, and then looking at the construction of the different facilities and the upgrade of the facilities. Next slide. You can see here looking at operational efficiency, looking at decreasing the hard to fill vacancies. We both have hard to fill jobs that we need to bring people from outside of the area because we don't have that workforce. Looking at creating partnership with the different universities, looking at the different programs out there for the hard to fill positions so that we go out there and attract people to come and work here. And then reducing the what we call the premium dollars, reducing the traveling nurses and hiring more staff so that we don't have to pay premium pay because we're short staffed. Next slide. Hear more about the integration, the consolidation, and looking at the different contracts that we have in terms of purchasing, equipment acquisition, leases that we have in the community, and looking at when those leases expire and if there's any clause that we could get out of some of those contracts because they're very duplicate of what we're doing. Next slide. Then creating that culture transformation. This is easier said than done. But we want to make sure that we start integrating our staff and supporting both entities in terms of creating a cohesive process, looking at how to ensure that our employees are satisfied so that they could provide the care that our patient population needs out here. Next slide. We started doing a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats. I won't bore you with all of the information there, but please take a look at that and provide us some input. This is kind of limited to what I have seen, what Chris and his team has seen, but we want to make sure that we share this with the community and we'll perhaps do some community outreach once we have a final document so that we get input from the community in terms of what they would like to see this look like. Next slide. And next slide. Similar. And then I kind of put some of the current state. I only outlined what we knew about ECMC. But this is a fluid document, so any input would be greatly appreciated. Next slide. And these are some of the questions that are still remain to be answered and remain to for the public to provide input in looking at different programs that either PMH has on site or that would like to expand, looking at how are these programs going to serve the community so that they don't have to be transported in an ambulance out of the community or flown out to some of the hospitals in the area. Next slide. That's it. If you want to add anything.
Just along the lines of what Pablo said, this is just the general framework. This is not the end result. This is us putting these things together from that 30,000 foot view to be able to say, these are things that we recognize and understand that need to happen. It's definitely not all inclusive, and in the way that that's set up with the different pockets, if you will, or buckets. A lot of the things that people may have ideas for, issues for that would need to be addressed or feel that need to be addressed will actually fit into one of those that's already set up. So that's why it's not all inclusive. Just like Pablo said, I think the biggest thing that's the most important thing for everybody here and for the board to really understand is the strategic plan is a fluid plan. It's not something that we put an absolute on and then say, we don't move from that. COVID probably taught us that more than anything, right? Like everybody had to pivot, everybody had to adjust and figure out what they had to do differently in that situation. And so this is the same thing. The other thing that's most important about it as well is that when this is completed and this is done and it's finalized, it's not something that goes in a notebook somewhere and then, is used for a doorstop or whatever. Like it's an actionable plan that as a board in particular, you guys should be asking for the results on these different things and expecting us to report these out on a regular basis so that you can see where we're at. That's the accountability that we would have under that is what we're doing in that strategic plan. Accountability to you as a board, accountability to the community as well. So it truly is a living, breathing document, and we really are in the first phase of it.
I see this as like the table of contents of what's going to go into it.
Yeah.
Type of deal.
You already have your committees formed and by advisors and.
Most of them are, and some of them will be assigned a owner. And that those folks will be reporting to the bigger group in terms of what's happening, similar to what we're doing with the merger and talking about the terms and condition. We have different groups that have started working on checking some items off the list, if you would, and starting looking at putting together a comprehensive step-by-step process to get some of these things accomplished.
One thing I'd like to see is some proposed mission, vision, and values that would come forward, because I think that that's the basis of any good strategic plan. And I understand that we're at the bare bones of this and we're just beginning, but also I would like to see on the ends of each of these, you have 3 categories: the goals, objectives, and strategies. I would like to see some optimal outcomes as it pertains specifically to the patient in their experience. Because we've talked a lot about numbers and how this transition takes place, but I think what we're missing is what the patient experience is. And if we don't have that patient population and the patient experience isn't there, then we don't have a patient population to build. And so I think that, we're basing so many things off of, billable hours, but we're missing sight of what the patient experience is. And so I'd like to see a bit more put into that on this preliminary strategic plan, and just document some, the best outcomes. And so in those, I know we'll transition as we move forward in this, and I understand it's a fluid document. It's a living document, but I would like to see some of those things, from the 30,000 foot level, and then we can narrow in on those as we progress.
Yes.
I'm really big on employees' rights, the protection of the employees, labor and things like that. I personally would like to see under threats, taking the union out of threats, because we need to protect our employees, and sometimes the unions are the first people that protect you from unfair labor practices and things like that. So I don't see union as a negative. I would rather see it, and not as a priority, but something that we have to contend with, because I mean, if we're gonna be providing better service to our community, well, we first have to take care of our people, and if we have great labor practices, then the union's gonna be there, but it'll be there when it's needed. So I don't necessarily see unions as a threat. I see it as something. Obviously, people have the choice to join a union or not. That's totally up to them, but I don't see it as a threat. That's just what I think.
Yeah, I think, right, like we could probably all sit and argue, the strengths and weaknesses of it. I'm sure members of the audience, same thing. But I think like the reality is like those certain things are there, right? Like the union's at UCRMC, I mean, the size of compliance is here at PMH. And so it's just kind of how, you view it. If it's just one of the things that are kind of gonna be the strategic plan that moves forward.
Do you have any medical advisors on your community from the provider side?
So right now, we are creating the document. My vision is to take these to the different medical committees at both hospitals and provide the plan and have the medical staff provide input or changes that they would like to see on their strategic plan.
Currently with that, with Dr. Kwan, it's part of this process.
Yes.
I think we need a lot more
Yeah.
of the provider
Yeah.
and their opinions.
Yeah, we want to involve the medical staff.
Right, and this is like the whole 30,000 foot view. This is the pieces that get put together, right? Like the providers are only a piece of it.
Right.
The other staff are a piece of it as well. That's what I'm saying. The other staff are a piece of it as well, and that's what Paulo's talking about. Like this is the part where we put it out there, and then we go and have the conversations with the different groups and get their feedback on those pieces. And that's part of the different groups that are put together for that. That is what their responsibilities are for that. So we have the group with the patient experience and quality in that. The job of those individuals that hold that spot right now is to go to that team, to go to the team at PMH, go to the team at UCRMC and say, these are some of the things we need to work on. What do we bring together? What do we change? And they work with the team on that, and then they bring it back to the group and say, this is what came out of that. Dr. Kwan, that's going to be part of what her responsibility is with providers, is to take that information to them as well and say, hey, this is what's coming out of that. What do we need to change? What do you want to see different? And then bring that back, and then it comes together. So that's the whole idea of having the different teams that we have to be able to, because it's with the amount of work that has to be done with this and the amount of data that's going to have to be extracted from that. There's no way Pablo could do it on his own. There's no way that I could do it on my own. Like we have to use that team and have those different work groups that are responsible for those different actions and going to the frontline staff and going to the team to pull that information back to make sure that we're not putting something together where we're like, that sounds great. And then we go to put it in action and the team's like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Like we can't do that. And if you would have asked us, we would have told you. So that's the part of those teams.
I just want to make sure there's enough input from your
There's a lot of training that needs to be done and educating and gathering feedback from folks. And one of the things that we want to make sure that the patients and the recipient of all those things that we're doing right now, sometimes people have forgotten about the patient, and we should be patient-centric. We should be providing services to the patient and ensuring that the patients are coming back to our organization, because there's a lot of competition out there. And we need to take care of the patient, because if we don't, somebody else is going to.
Well, my comment to that, Mr. Valdez, is that the employee has to be happy and the providers have to be happy in order to get a happy patient. So therefore, there has to be that balance. So, I know it's patient centric, but we have to have that balance. We have to have everyone happy. We can't have this camp over here, this camp over here, or this camp.
And that's possible.
Okay.
But you have to have,
I've seen it in other organizations where you have the trifecta.
but that's why you have to have participation by physicians, not just to make us happy, but, our business and what we do is for patient care. And so I like to make that comment that it's getting like separated, and then you insinuating that like, we have to remember patient care. I think, well, like, that's what we do, right? So part of us participating is about patients. I don't think it means, physician participation, it just means to make us happy. I think it's, for our input of how to take care of patients.
Well, the way I see
Come to
it,
the podium if you're gonna speak, anybody in the audience, please.
we,
Sorry for the record, so people can hear it and we can have the transcription of it.
we are creating a new healthcare system, and we want the physicians to be part of that creation.
Yeah, we want to be part of it too.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Dr. Sharif, I'm the chairman for the pediatric department and the vice president for the vice chairman for Pioneers. I heard today a couple of, not sure of the right term to say, contradicting points. The CEO said we are just at the start, we are at the beginning. But then when Ms. Parker asked if there is groups assigned, you said yes. So if there's a group assigned, I'm kind of concerned about the medical staff, the policies, the procedures, the process that we have for credentialing. Because as a chairman of a department and as a vice for the chief medical staff of Pioneers, this is the first time I hear this conversation even started. So I think a lot of my colleagues here at Pioneers agree with me that they probably wanted to hear something sooner than today.
So when I talked about that there's already groups that have formed, we have an IT group that has started working on comparing and contrasting the software that they have. We have the HR department who are started their meeting, looking at policies, looking at procedures, looking at job descriptions, looking at certain pay practices. Then we have the C team have been meeting a couple of times to look at how do we integrate everybody into the new system. There has not been, and this is the first beginning of involving the medical staff. And this is the first draft. It will be presented at the different medical committees. And we would like to have participation from the medical staff. I have always said in my career, you can't run a hospital without doctors. So we need you guys to be part of what we're creating. Thank you.
At this data collection point in this process, are we going to start surveying the staff as a whole to get input that wouldn't necessarily be given if they're told to come to a committee and present that information, maybe collecting some anonymous information that people might not be as forthcoming to give in a formal setting and getting true and honest feedback, not only from all of the staff on both sides, because there is an us versus them mentality that needs to be broken, and that speaks directly to the culture component of this. But that's not going to happen until you collect data from both sides and you can show them that their concerns are the same on both sides, and showing them where things are a lot more alike than they may imagine, and solving those issues on a grander scale than individual working groups where you may not get the honest feedback. And I think the same can be said for the patient population or the valley population, and getting feedback from them. And I'm not saying that each and every single piece of information has to be run with, but take into consideration when you have trends that you can pull from those types of surveys.
And there's a lot of, still a lot of meetings, a lot of employee forums. We do collect, information from, patient. We have both hospitals have patient satisfaction surveys that go out to the patient. And trust me, they give us feedback. And, one of the things that we have done at my organization, every morning when we have our safety huddle, one of the managers brings up a good story about a patient and something that we fell short in terms of meeting the patient expectation. So that, because everybody, if you ask people, they all think they're providing excellent care, but that's not the perception of the patient. So that's an eye opener for everybody at morning huddles when they hear, I had to wait 2 hours for blood work, or I had to wait. I had an appointment at 9 o'clock. I wasn't seen until 11 o'clock. And patients provide us that feedback, and we take that to heart. And when we fall short of meeting their expectations, we try to do better.
Are the quality teams from both hospitals working together to create a survey that is identical across the board? Because when we continue to do two separate things, then it keeps the atmosphere going that
So
we're.
that's a standardized one. So it's regulated that way. It's the same questions. It's just a matter of who does it. So there's different groups that will do it, and they'll send it out. It'd be either, I did at one of the previous meetings provide that to the board so they could see it's kind of extensive, but it's the same questions, and they have to ask those questions regardless of where it's from. So it is standardized.
So, yeah, I think this is like, I'm looking at like your kind of like your charts, right? And you have your like immediate like admin stuff that you guys are like kind of your groups to, tackle now. The stuff we're kind of doing while we're closing into escrow, and then the stuff that's like post-merger implementation and you're like 1 to 2 years. And then what's missing off is like the, 5-year outlook.
Yeah.
Mr. Irving, you can really think you.
Thank you, Ron Rubin Crawley. Once again, thank you for, you brought us the org chart last meeting. This is another thing that you're getting in a view from up above that's got a lot of details that aren't written down. Those details you'll find out one a day, hopefully, because there's a million plus of them. My biggest concern is, of course, financial stability of the district. And I think you missed an opportunity today to learn something about the seismic compliance. There was a webinar put on by the Department of Health Access and Information. And they have a special department on this seismic compliance. And they're the people that make the decisions on whether you comply or you don't. Now, I don't know exactly where PMH, their contracts or what they've had approved are, but you are in a rural care district. You're classified as rural and you have different methods of compliance. So I would urge you to get started with the committee and getting with people that have been doing the work. And I can provide some names, but you probably already have some of these names in your work. And most of that would be helping through your ACHD or that you approved the contract a couple of meetings ago.
Yeah, actually, Mr. Rubin, I was actually on that webinar with HCHD and HCI today. It was from 10 to 12.
Okay, well, I apologize because I didn't see your name. You probably saw my name. Okay, but I do appreciate you saying.
Yeah, and we actually, I don't think we are considered a rural hospital, but we do qualify under getting the distressed hospital loan.
Well, you do, but they had a chart, right, that they presented that said we are rural.
On CEOs for that.
Okay.
So,
And
my understanding.
El Centro's not on that list because of their compliance and
Yeah, my understanding was rural was like 50 hospitals or less, or then you were certain environments, and we didn't meet those standards, but we do meet the exception for it because we got a distressed hospital.
yes. Thank you.
Much as father of dating cardiologist here in the valley for the last 3 decades. I wanted to comment a few things about what I heard today. There was a lot of discussion about EMR. And I'll tell you that this is one of the most important things that we got to get right. We've had 2 missed opportunities getting the valley on one healthcare system. When we were on paper, the government subsidized us to get on electronic records. And this is going back a decade. I remember having meetings with both the CEOs saying, get one EMR system, and the entire physician community will fall on the system. That a patient in the valley needs one medical record. And it ended up that Pioneers had its system, El Centro had its system, and within Pioneers, the ER had its system, and MedSurg had its system. El Centro did the same thing. Care has been really, really hard for all of us, especially for me, trying to manage patients. Patient goes to the ER, comes to my office the next day. Even today, we have to rely on paper faxing. The community network is there, but it takes an inordinate amount of time. You literally need to have a person next to you logging into the community health network to see what's happening with the patient. So you all need to work on getting the valley on one medical record system. 10 years ago, I was told, yeah, it's going to be very expensive doing that. This system is expensive. And I hear the same thing now. If 10 years ago, we were on one system, we would have saved a lot of money. All healthcare district would have saved a lot of money. Going forward, we're going to be paid by quality metrics. We're not going to be paid by find a care. Patient comes to one ER, next day goes to the other ER. You got a scan here, you got a scan here. You're not going to get paid for that. Now you're going to be one district and readmissions are going to not get paid for 30 days. So if you look at quality metrics going forward, you got to work on one system. It's very important. I was very disappointed to hear that both got new systems, 20 million each or whatever. And even after integration, Dr. Bond's telling me, what, 2 years? We got the records? That even after integration, there are these costs and the systems don't talk to each other. And they are separate systems, so
But the same company.
same company.
Yes.
And this was all done last year. Knowing well that both the systems are kind of looking at merger. Enormous amount of healthcare dollars are getting wasted and patient care suffering. So we gotta have a short-term plan, we gotta have a long-term plan. What we've done didn't work. And this has gotta change. This has gotta change if we all need to look at the valley as one community and take care of the lives. Because without the EMR systems, can't do proper care. Entire San Diego is in one system. Kaiser, Scripps, Sharp, and UCSB. Human, all in one system. Right, so if patients are going back and forth, they need one chart. And so that if I go to a physician, I go to another hospital, click, and my record needs to be there. So we don't get duplicated. So you all need to work on this as priority and make this happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Retired Huffman, I'm one of the general surgeons. I had one question, I guess, or maybe clarification. I think we, or you had mentioned that one of the CMOs wasn't here. Pioneers does not have a CMO, correct? Or you just have a 2%? Okay, so just to clarify that, semantics. And then my other question is, I think a lot of the community has been asking, what is the relationship with UCSD? What is it about? What does it entail? And that hasn't really been answered. So since they're so involved now, maybe we can have a little bit of transparency about it.
Pablo.
So.
Yeah.
So I would say,
So, well, one of the things I can say is, ECRMC, the city of El Centro, and UCSD are currently part of a joint powers agreement whereby UCSD manages ECRMC pursuant to that agreement. It's a management agreement. And that's a 5-year contract that ECRMC currently has with the city of El Centro and UCSD. The 5-year contract, it was signed last year. It's about a year and a half. It's about a year into it. So there's about 4 years, a little under 4 years left. That contract is one we would have to inherit anyway, doing the merger. But we are also, well, the board is going to consider at some point in the next month or two, a comparable management agreement with UCSD for UCSD to manage the 2 hospital system, the way it currently manages ECRMC. That would be also pursuant to a joint powers agreement, which we've been negotiating with UCSD, which would supersede and replace the joint powers agreement that is currently in place between ECRMC, the city of El Centro, and UCSD.
And what's the benefit?
What's the benefit of that? Well, we're gonna have a whole full-blown presentation on what the benefit of that would be together with UCSD when that item comes to this board.
What are the benefits? It's a little bit too late.
so I'm gonna leave to Pablo and talk about what the benefits are now,
Yeah.
because that's something, there's contracts that we inherited from PMH that, I mean, we're gonna be completely honest and transparent, the board didn't like either, and so we're trying to make, the best of what we've got.
Yeah, and I think this is not something, at least at the staff level, that we're viewing as like a bad deal we have to inherit. It's a real opportunity to work with a very well-established organization, a public organization that provides superior healthcare services. I'm not here to debate, and I'm just legal. I'm just letting you know, the question was, what is the relationship with UCSD? Right now, we don't have one. The proposed relationship with UCSD is going to be through a joint powers arrangement for the board's consideration. And Pablo, I do encourage you to talk about UCSD and the benefits to working with them.
Yeah,
ECRC had greatly benefited from the relationship between the two entities. During COVID, UCSD provided a lot of assistance with the intensivists taking care of the very sick COVID patients and creating programs and implementing best practices. We also rely on UCSD to provide a physician workforce that's very hard down here. They provide services for anesthesia, they provide services for the emergency department. We do have some relationships with some specialty physicians, some of our cancer patients. We refer them to UCSD for complex cancer care and clinical trials. We depend on UCSD when we look at purchasing equipment and supplies. So in my opinion, in what I've seen, we have greatly benefited, the community has greatly benefited from that relationship that we have with UCSD.
But do you think our hospital was at a disadvantage because we weren't affiliated? I mean,
I'm just, can we get a point of order here? If you're wanting to speak, please approach the podium.
I'm just
so we
talking
can get it
about
done.
the benefits that ECRC has. That was the question that I could talk about. What are the benefits of UCSD and the partnership at ECRC?
Susan Brown, general surgeon. So I get it, I think with you're addressing them, but if there's a benefit, you would have to give examples of how then we were at a disadvantage because we weren't. I actually like UCSC. Like, I think the affiliation is gonna work. I think though we have to be smart about the JP, right? So we have to make sure they have liability. We have to make sure, I think the whole, I don't know you, I see people seem to like you. I know Chris does, so I'm not, so when I say something, it's not to be against you or anything, but I don't know you, right? And so I think it's like weird, to put it bluntly, that we have to have UCSD who manages that, and then they give us our CEO. I've asked, Chris multiple times, like, how is that a conflict of interest, right? And so I do feel like there's some conflict of interest, I think, just common sense would tell me that it's weird, right? That we had to abide by someone's management, but they give us the CEO. I think that would be a conflict. I don't know if he explained it to me why there may not be, but I don't get it. I would though. So I feel like, here we are, pioneers, we're made to then bring on El Centro. I kind of also, it doesn't sit well with me that even though we're kind of have to, we have to take on El Centro for all of us to survive, right? Because we don't even have money for our seismic stuff. So it's not like we're on this great place and then we're gonna take on El Centro. Like, no, we're gonna stop. We have problems too because we have to do the seismic, clients, whatever. I would love, because it seems like here we are, we're gonna lose our CEO. We may lose all our C-suite because you're gonna have to be our CEO, right? Which means that you're gonna have to hire the COO, the CNO, whoever. And then, if that's true, then, the day after you become CEO, you could fire Chris and he could be gone, So it's like, who do we have? I would love to see, I think somehow make it work. Then you have to sit at Pioneers. Maybe Pioneers could be the central office where instead of you being at, Central, which you are familiar with for the last year or so, maybe your suite that everybody has to come here. So then you can learn our hospital and we don't have to feel like we're being managed by, or taken over by El Centro, And I would love to have a discussion with you, the people like Carol, who, we've come to depend on, because I love Chris and he's done a great job for us before they fired him for no reason. But, but the thing is, because Carol has been here for so long, Carol has been for physicians, our kind of person to go to, and I would hate to lose someone like Carol, because, you want to hire your own CNO or bring on your own CNO. Because I feel like that we have nobody, we've had, because of our history, we had we used to have a COO, but then, that person got fired. But we really had no one to go to. we could talk about that too. But I'm just saying, like, I would just love to, have you guys, not just to see at El Central, but come over here too, learn who we are, like, get to meet other physicians. So we don't feel like here you are taking just us over, but we truly are merging.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I would say, so one of the things, like, a lot of the questions I think about the JPA, like what we have in place, I think the first thing this board said was, we don't like it. Like, that was, one of my first conversations with the CEO of UCSD Health was like, I don't like this JPA. It's not gonna fly for UCSD. And so there's been a lot of things that we've like worked through. I would like to have it, sooner rather than later because, first it was like the question of, are we gonna merge or not, right? And it was like, I don't know, really didn't have a yes or no answer until March. And then now like this JPA with UCSD is leaving everybody with all these unanswered questions. And like, I really hate coming in front of all of you that are here or anybody and being like, we don't have the answers, right? Because we don't have it for approval yet. So I hope that everybody who has questions, when that item does come up on our agenda, that you guys come and, read it and like write your comments, ask your comments, because when we approve it, like that's really your time to like say, hey, board, I have issues with this. I have questions on this. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And we can make sure that it's out there for you guys to review, instead of, just the 3 days for the Brown app. We can put it out at a time, have our C-suite team send it out to the physicians and really incorporate your guys' feedback into it because it is important.
Yeah, I agree. And I would like to say thank you for your honesty in the way that you're speaking today, because that is the type of feedback that we need, because the decision will be made at this table. And so I'm a very firm believer that I don't know what I don't know. And if you're not here to tell me that, then I can't take it into consideration. So I greatly appreciate your honesty, and I would encourage everyone to please speak up because closed mouths don't get fed, and I need to absorb that information. So thank you.
I'm Mark White. I'm one of the general surgeons here. I think maybe I missed it, but I think the very important thing to talk about is what the structure of this merger is supposed to look like in terms of how are you going to divide services, who's doing what, where, when. Because I think that's one of the things that's most important to patients. If you've been here long enough, you realize that the patients tend to be territorial. So, that's, I think, a big issue that needs to be addressed first. And I think having all these structures that you have put up is fine, but if you don't know how the system is going to look at the end of it, some of this may not work. And so I think figuring that part out and then dovetailing on that, what this JPA thing is going to look like. I think those are the two most important things we need to be looking at. Thank you.
Any other comments? Questions?
So on this item, it's not for action, it's information only. I just want to remind the board, this is the first sort of presentation on this topic. The teams are by no means done, and we are continuing to work through the details of the purchase agreement. The operational folks are continuing to work through the particulars of the strategic plan. And we are waiting for comments back on the joint powers agreement from UCSD, which we hope to get soon. But and this may be something for item 11, but for future agenda, I know Pablo had discussed community input into this document, which is pretty comprehensive, but not the final version of the strategic plan. My understanding is this document is going to inform and be the sort of framework for what the strategic plan will ultimately be that's presented to this board. Do you want to ask for, because we're going to meet again next Friday for the end of May board meeting. Do you want to give me and Chris, Paulo, some feedback with respect to what you want to see next time, when you'd like to see something, what kind of presentations or informations you'd like to see? Because this is as Pablo said, a living document, and we expect to have many of these conversations. This was just the first.
What do you think is the logical next step? Like, what is like the next phase that you're gonna, I know we talked about like master planning, like an RFP, because we have to get all that for seismic. You know, we're talking about all that. So what's the logical next step that you guys present to us?
But
So either of you.
We have to finalize the terms of condition and sign the document so that we move
Right.
forward.
And BMG, has a financial model, and which I believe they've shown to the C-suite groups, and needs to, it's kind of, this happens and then this refines it, and then this happens and then this refines it in terms of the numbers, right? What's gonna shake out financially? What's it gonna look like? And then operationally, okay, what are the services? What are the people? What's labor? What's this look like? So that back and forth is happening.
So we have a meeting on the 19th, to go over feedback that we received from you guys with the team that's put together for this. And so part of that is taking the feedback that we got from here. Pablo and I obviously will meet before that and go over some of the stuff, but it's using the feedback that we've gotten to be able to start to give direction to the different work groups that are being put together. So as he mentioned in there, as you go through there, it talks about that, like the work groups aren't formalized yet. Like we have a couple of them that are in play, but we haven't formalized all of them yet because we needed some feedback. And so part of what would happen after the 19th, if you guys wanted us to report on, would be what work groups are actually in place right now. What are they working on? Like what's the angle for the work groups? That would be my opinion. That'd be something that would be important for the board to know and understand, and kind of correlates with other conversations that have happened here with the public as well.
So does like giving another update on what's going on at the June 12th meeting make sense? It kind of gives you a month. And
Validate. That's a good time. frame.
Yeah, I think that, yeah.
right, like, I mean, I know I see like a lot of this stuff like coming out, like, even after we're done with this, talk about like updating the strategic plan updates on it quarterly to make sure that we're meeting those milestones and on target, right? And then like Carly doing the finances, quarterly, right, and have them all kind of staggered, so there's always updates, like certain months, if that makes sense.
Yeah, quality of the other.
Yeah, quality in the other one,
Okay.
I have a question. Are we still planning to do a couple of community forums specifically for this topic to get public input?
That is the board's, absolutely, you could, and
And
if you
Pablo
want
did
to.
mention that. Pablo
Yeah, I'll go
mentioned
ahead and mention that, yeah.
We should,
And,
we will.
yeah,
So,
And it's only fair for the community to provide it.
yeah, so,
Yeah, well, I think we need to have a forum or something specifically designed for this type of back and forth, because it's very cumbersome to be included within, I keep saying this, we're kind of schizophrenic because we're trying to do our due diligence in running a hospital, but we're also trying to do our due diligence in merging hospitals, but we need to hear from the public, so we need to have I would like to have us have some community forums designed just so the public can come and the employees and the staff and have that back and forth input so that it's not as controlled as it is when it's within public comments limited to 3 minutes in a regular meeting. It's my experience.
so do you want to have a community forum or community where the board is also present, or do you want to direct staff to have that without the board?
So I think should be present.
I
We
think
need to hear
I
what
think,
the community is saying.
hold on, take a step back. I think Kristen actually is marketing and team actually has a plan that they are actually working on right now. And that talk about the little things, but I know there's a lot of things outgoing. I mean, let's be honest, if we present this, like people don't, This is like the admin stuff, like the community doesn't care that we're merging our IT systems. They wanna know what service lines we're bringing. They wanna know where they're gonna have to go, and we're not there yet. I think we're, putting the cart before the horse because what we're gonna get is a bunch of people pissed off at us because they still don't have answers. I think we're then setting us up for failure. I mean, I think community forums are super important and we need to start getting out there. Like, we definitely need to start having tables at resource fairs and be at all of them and advertisement and being on social media. But I think a community forum at this stage, like, while they're still running the numbers, like, it's super premature right now. That's just my,
I couldn't answer your questions tonight, so how could we answer?
And maybe I'm not thinking about answering questions. I just want to hear what it is that the community ultimately wants to see happening. Otherwise, then we're spinning our wheels and guessing at what we think everybody wants because we seem to think it's a great idea, but we're here to represent the people. And to get that feedback, to be able to hear or just be able to say, this is important, or, I really appreciate what I heard tonight because it was telling me what's important from your standpoint. And I'd like to have a venue where, it's not just happening over here behind the scenes, but we're actually getting that input from the community because that's why we're here, is to make this better for the community. So I guess maybe that is a little premature, but I think it'd be nice to hear from the community before we get too much farther down the road and find out, oops, we're going this way and they want us to go this way.
but I don't think it's necessarily what they want. I think it's what we need and what's financially viable as well, right? Like, that's kind of like why they have to have the data, right? Because you're gonna hear people go, I wanna open the OB back, at ECRC, like, that's an easy one. Well, is that financially viable? Like, there's certain services that we're never gonna be able to financially support down, and so I think part of their strategic plan is like, these are the services and that specialties that we're gonna be able to bring in. There is a community needs assessment that's out there that Hero County Public Health did, and I think everybody contributed to it. And so I think both hospitals really have a good idea of the services that they need, and they can look at the patients that they transfer out. And some of them are simply just because we don't have the specialties here.
So I'd like to say this, that I really appreciate all of you doctors talking. I can promise you this, that us as a board, maybe we ignored or maybe haven't been listening to you as a group. Because we've been so busy with other things and especially talking to the community at large. First the community and then the staff and stuff like that. And maybe we haven't given you a voice at this point that's significant for us to hear your concerns. But I can promise you this, that we do listen to everybody, and I don't like the feeling I have right now. The feeling I have right now is as if you guys believe that once UCSD comes in, that you're out. And I hate that feeling. I don't like that feeling even for myself. I can guarantee you that you are part of this organization. No different than when we told the staff on our first meeting, hey, we're not going to lose the identity of pioneers. We're never going to do that. We're never going to lose the identity of ECRMC. We're two different campuses, but we're all together. And I like to look at the positive that I believe, whether it's UCSD or Scripps or whomever, if they're a big entity and they have research, they have the ability to use you as the experts, because I'm a firm believer that when you have best practices, some people go elsewhere to get best practices. Well, sometimes best practices are made here because you have a unique community. And I see you as equals to any doctor from UCSD or Scripps or whomever. That's the way I see you. All I know is that when we're part of UCSD, there's going to be so many resources there that you are probably going to benefit personally as well. I want to let you know that we believe in every doctor, whether they're at El Centro Regional or here. We love you guys and we want to keep everybody. All we're trying to do is make healthcare better so that we're not stuck in this position that we are in right now with finances and all this stuff. We're going to be saving money to the point about losing positions. We've already made a commitment that we're going to try to keep everybody because we don't want anybody, but we need everybody. all hands on deck. And so I can tell you personally, my commitment to you doctors is that we think about you all the time. We want the best for you. And don't think that just because UCSD's coming in, or there could have been an old JPA that we have to live under. It's okay. We're gonna be fine. And your voice is as important as any other doctor from UCSD or else Central Regional, and vice versa, because you are the professionals. And there is no way we can run a hospital or two hospitals without any of you, including your staff. And everybody works really, really hard. That's all I had to say. And you will be part of our planning process, moving forward. Okay?
To Chad, but I think finance your teachers, Carol is not here.
She's online.
Oh, is she gonna present online? I don't care. That's fair.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I submitted the CNO report. There was one area that I wanted to focus on, which was just to mention it is Nurses Week, May 6th through the 12th, which I know you already know because there was something that was presented in the media. I also wanted to bring attention to our hospital safety grade for our leapfrog was made public, and we are at a letter C, which is an improvement from the previous reporting period. Aside from that, I also did submit the score survey, which is a summary report. And I had mentioned that there was a detailed report that would also go out, but I did find out from Beta that they're no longer providing that detailed report because they're making some changes to that format. So the only thing that we're going to have available is the survey summary report that I submitted. And just as a refresher, our response rate was 74%, which is very good. You would want to see something higher than 60%. The higher the response rate, the more valid the results are, and they reflect better what's going on within the department. There was overall there were 40 work settings, and there were 608 respondents. And if you see on the first page, I'm not going to go into details unless you have questions. But in all the areas, you'll see that there was a positive improvement, which is great news for everyone. It shows the work that we have been doing over the last couple of years in terms of patient safety and engagement, employee engagement. So we were really happy. We met with Beta about 2 weeks ago. We reviewed our scores, and they were very complimentary in terms of them seeing, our response rate, and then just also seeing that we are having every year we seem to have improvements. So I was really happy to be able to share that with you. And so that's what I have, unless you have questions for me regarding the CNO report or the survey.
Anybody have any questions? I just want to say congratulations to you and your whole team and all the staff that work hard. Improvement's amazing, and that's definitely the direction I think we all want to see everybody going.
Thank you. It definitely takes a village.
And we'll move out to Farley's more clinics operating.
The report is in the packet. It is pretty lengthy with all the different departments, so if you have questions, please let me know. But I do want to take note for the clinics, the patient satisfaction. I'm going to move it to quarterly because a lot of those numbers are not really reflective. Some are high, some are low. Some maybe have one survey, then maybe have 3. So I'll start reporting that out quarterly and see if we can get some better numbers. And then with pharmacy, I had written the DEA submission was completed. It was submitted, And we did receive the updated license for Fairview Healthcare District, so it is posted. And those are the two updates since I've given, submitted this report. But if you have any questions, please let me know. I'd be happy to.
It's so small. There was a meeting today held at the Gillespie's city office. I think in the past, with my last report, we had said that there was different opinions by different inspectors going to the urgent care site. For our request, we had a meeting with all the parties involved. And as of today, they told us that we just need to put up 3 signs and we'll get a green light. That's a sign on each waiting room that says the maximum occupancy. And a sign by the expensive door on the back that says no exit on it. Those will be ordered shortly, and once they're in, they're gonna do a final inspection and then we'll go.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you guys.
I do have a question. So that little kiosk area in the middle of the urgent care,
Yes.
does it get really, really hot like in the summertime in that area? Because I was thinking about the old Burgers and Beer, how they used to have misters in the patio area. And it's sitting outside, I don't know, I was kind of thinking.
Well, just your question. So it was per the request of the city inspector Calexico that they put the shade in there. That solar, it's like a mesh. And if you wanna, I think a good example, if we put out a mist or anything like that, ECRMC tried it for a while, then they calcify right away. And then they just made a home of it, and it was very nice examples. So just a good question. Thanks.
See, Dave.
All right, thank you. So just to let the board know, we did have a meeting today about the stop loss that we talked to you guys about before. They presented it to us. We're getting some finalized numbers from them. It will come to you guys in the next board meeting. So just giving you a heads up on that. One of the options looks like the one that will be recommended is probably about a 15.3% increase from our previous one, which is down from the initial 40% that it started out at. So got it whittled down a bit. So we'll present that at the next board meeting. So you guys will have that in the packet. With that, also we've reported before on our employee action committee. That kicks off on the 19th of this month. So we got a number of applicants in, we reviewed those and made our selection for that committee. And sent out the emails and set up the time that we'll have that first meeting on the 19th. So we'll kick that off this month and start that. So pretty excited about that one. Also, just to report out on the Becker's conference, it was a great conference. Katie presented at one of them actually and did a phenomenal job. So I want to throw that out there so you guys are aware. She represented well. And we did a little team building with the other ECRMC team that was there, which I think was a lot of fun. And it was a good opportunity for us to be able to start that process of changing that culture and bonding those two teams. So I think that went really well as well. So aside of that, I just also want to remind you, because obviously we've talked at length about the strategic planning process and some of the stuff we're doing with ECRMC together and working together. And with that, you'll see some more of the other components on from the marketing standpoint, the Stronger Together campaign, and some of the things that we're doing there. There is an outreach piece that we're looking at. We're having a meeting tomorrow on. So as that finalizes, hopefully at the next board meeting, we'll be able to present some more information on that component of it. So that you can kind of get an idea of some of the things that we're looking at from the community involvement and outreach piece that we want to make sure gets involved in there. So more to come on that as that initial meeting starts tomorrow. And then finally, next week is hospital week, which is the t-shirts that you guys got. We'll be wearing those next week with the team. So just kind of give you guys a rundown of some of the stuff that we're going to be doing. Typically what we do is we try to have different things that happen every year. And or every day of that week, and we try to, you know, obviously food is always a good thing, so we do something with food every day, and then maybe like a fun type of activity, or dress up a little bit differently. And so Monday is going to be dress up as your favorite movie character. And then we're going to have an ice cream social, and where it could be Sundays or floats or something like that. And we do that during the day for the staff, and then we come in again at night and do it for the team at night as well. Tuesday, of course, it makes a lot of sense that we're doing Taco Tuesday on that day. And so the foundation each year pays for the tacos for the team. And so that's a really big day. And so we have a group that comes in and we hand out the tacos, and that's Mexican attire that day. And then of course we're going to kick that off with also a little best salsa contest in here as well.
Like dancing?
Not dancing, no. I saw it. I saw it.
You need judges?
Absolutely, absolutely. So,
Very.
Nice.
Wednesday is our Western attire day, and we've got an array of snacks and stuff like that. There's going to be like cornhole and horseshoes and things like that that we'll have out there. And then Thursday is Decade Day, so dress up an outfit from your favorite decade. And then we have shaved ice that we do for the team, same kind of thing. Come in at night and do that for the night staff as well, and get them taken care of. And then of course that's one of our bigger ones. We have a dunk tank on that day, and so the staff are voting right now on who they want to see in the dunk tank.
They want Pablo.
Waiting. Yeah, I am. I'm not real sure because
If we put the board up there, we can raise a lot of money for the damage. But, yeah,
I was
right.
invited, so. Letty's taking in all of the votes, and she says I'm first on the list, but I haven't actually seen any numbers, but allegedly that's where it's at.
It's ready for you.
So, but that's happening on Thursday. And then Friday, we do our kind of barbecue, burgers and hot dogs and that kind of stuff. We wear our PMA shirts. Everybody wears their PMA shirts that day. We're going to do a little tug of war contest between the two different departments, and to see who gets to take away the trophy for this year. So,
What's the trophy?
Huh?
What's the trophy?
It's a good question. I haven't come up with one yet.
Right?
Bragging rights is a big part of that, but you know, we'll have some sort of traveling trophy.
Might have to get a smaller bill next year.
But the same thing we do there, we'll have we'll cook for our staff during the afternoon, and then we'll come in again at night and take care of the night shift staff as well. So those are some of the events. You guys are more welcome to come and participate in those. We'd love to have you there. Especially on Friday, come wear your shirts, we'll get a hot dog, hamburger, whatever. But that's what's happening for hospital week. They share the same week. So that's happening.
Schedule with the time of the events.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's got a little flyer to make sure you guys have. And technically, it went out to everybody in their emails, and you guys are part of those now, so you should get those.
So we can do it.
It's probably,
Oh, you probably didn't.
it's probably there, but we'll resend it again so you guys have it fresh.
It was scattered.
Yeah. there was one that you-
Yeah, there's lots of emails. Oh, I know about that. But that's my report. If you guys have any other questions, then we're happy to answer at this point.
Thank you. You guys are all, you and your C-suite and all your staff are juggling a lot and have a lot of special projects, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, they're holding up the whole thing.
Yeah.
Just the board.
No, I mean, the board, you know, I always say I'm like we're the dumb ones.
Yeah,
They're
that's
the
what I
smart,
mean.
you know, they do all the work, you know, all the above, so. no,
It'd be amazing.
So. Adrian,
Nothing to report, please.
we have items for future agenda. We already went over that, actually. Unless anybody else has anything to add. Not. Break. We're gonna take a 5 minute, 10 minute break and then we're gonna go into close.